All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this 7th of our 8 workshop series in CMC Summer Prep. In the next page, you can see that many of you, I see many familiar names, have gone through a weekly workshop like this with us for the last six weeks. So thank you for joining in your early morning or early evening, wherever your time zone is, through this process, and we're almost done. Today we're going to talk about cover letters, and that is a topic that we have a lot of questions from students on, most frequently of which is, do recruiting managers even read cover letters, or should I even have a cover letter if it says to be optional? So for our first activity and a warm-up to this session, we would like to invite you to talk about what words come up to mind when you think about cover letters. So this is a word cloud activity. Again, you can use your phone, or yes, click on this chat, this link sent by Brooke in the chat box. So what do you think, what words come up to mind? Write mine too.
And while you're filling that out, I'm going to switch the screen over to Menti.
All right, so I have 13 responses. It's part of the application. It's professional. It needs to be tailored. It sort of is a point of connection, and it needs to be specific. But yes, half of our responses are, frustrating, tedious, it's hard, it's almost useless. Now that's all very normal. We hear that a lot, and we feel of how you feel about cover letters. Now, if we switch back to our presentation, we actually, people have asked this question. So sort of, what percentage of recruiters actually read cover letters? Anyone care to take a guess? Oops.
Sorry.
To be honest, my guess before, actually researching for it, I was thinking 20% or 30%. But yeah, Byung-ho, if you're showing the results, actually almost 3/4 or more.
Oh, I think Jenny might have froze. Apologies, everybody. Jenny's zooming in from Hong Kong right now, so the Wi-Fi is a bit wonky.
I'll say I thought it was great that Jenny pulled this out, because we've a couple of times we've done panels of recruiters and employers, and it's often been fairly split in terms of those that are like, oh yeah, we read cover letters, and then someone else on the panel will be like, oh, we don't read cover letters, we don't look at them. So yeah, it's just interesting to see how that is reflected here. I do think one thing that's interesting is I would imagine that hiring managers might be a little bit more likely to read a cover letter than perhaps a recruiter, especially if recruiters looking through a lot of applicants. If you're getting to a hiring manager, you know, a lot of times it's a smaller percentage of applicants. So yeah. I guess we can move to the next slide unless if anybody else has anything up in on. So there are sometimes you can see here that it can be more important to have a cover letter. Like, yeah, I mean, knowing that not everybody looks at cover letters, the way I kind of think about it is, you know, we write cover letters for the, you know, as we're seeing in that last slide, the 80% of people who read them. Because you don't know, you know, like when you're applying, you're not going to know, hey, is this an employer, unless you have a couple of employers like I think Google has been pretty firm on that, hey, we don't need cover letters for applications. And there's some other employers that are pretty firm on that, but it gets trickier when cover letters are optional, especially, and you're like, should I do it? Should I not do it? So yeah, I've got a story about that I can share in a bit. But I think there are certain times that cover letters are really important. And one of the bullet points here is there are certain jobs where they really want to know what your writing skills are like. Equity research analyst, I think some people are like, oh, finance roles, it doesn't matter at all. But no, that's not true. Like equity research analyst is one where it's really, really important. If you're an equity research analyst, there's a very good chance that you're going to be doing writing that a lot of people are going to be looking at. And if you can't write well, they're not going to be as interested in you for the role. Obviously, there's a lot of marketing roles where it's saying. Cover letters can also be really helpful. If you look at a lot of our sample cover letters, you'll see that personal connection referral. That's really important because you can call that out. You can mention that you have somebody. And I've heard it several times that what'll happen inside the company is the recruiter will be like, oh, you know, this student at Vanderbilt applied and they're mentioning this person that I know. Hey, let me give that person a call. Let me send them a quick, you know, message like, hey, you know, do you know this person who just applied? Oh, you do. They've been responsive. They've been asking good things. Oh, hey, great. Like, you know, all of a sudden you're going to stand out a lot from the pool. Jenny, I was hopping in, but please feel free to. It's good to have you.
Yes, I think the only point I would add there, yeah, is do not be fooled by the optional wording.
Oh, I'll say my quick story on the optional thing is there was one time, there's a very unique situation. It was the end of his school year and we had a Vanderbilt employee. He posted a position or a Vanderbilt alum who posted a position on 12/20. And he called me because I knew him from when he was a student. He was like, hey, we had 6 people apply. Cover letters were optional. 5 people submitted cover letters. I'm going to interview all 5 who submitted the cover letters. And he ended up interviewing them and he thought none of them were a good fit. And I, you know, knew the other student and talked to the other student. I was like, hey, you know, this guy's still looking. You didn't submit a cover letter, which that was not helpful for you. I was like, maybe if you're still interested, why don't you try networking with him? And that student, even though he didn't submit the cover letter, tried networking, eventually did get the interview and got the job, but almost missed it only because the only reason he missed the interview was because he didn't submit a cover letter.
Next slide.
Yeah, and Zeke is mentioning like a good point about how actually your hiring managers or someone who actually is forwarding your resume can actually use a cover letter as a really strong argument for your case, right? So that's another step that's beyond what you can see in where a cover letter can actually pull strength. Yeah, and at the CMC, we sort of view this structure of a cover letter. It's almost like when you go out dating, right? It's you send me a message of I like you, and you know, and here are the arguments of why you should like me, and kind of calling to action. Let's get together. As easy and sort of a everyday analogy as it is, we think it's an easy way for you to remember a structure of a cover letter. We've definitely seen cases where there's a lot of I like you, or there's a lot of I like me, look at me sort of cover letters. This structure hopefully can kind of help you remember the balance of things and the different components of a cover letter. So first in I like you. So this is what led you to apply, right? As we just mentioned, any common contacts, what you've read about the company. This is to show where you actually have done the research, and specify why you like them, why you want to work for them. This is where specific wording should come out rather than something like, oh, I want to work for McKinsey because you're an industry leader. The main body of the cover letter should be your sales pitch of how your strength and background and skills will bring value to the organization. We're going to talk about how we can structure this section in a clear and structured way to help you distinguish you from other candidates. But this is where you should talk about your strength, your past experience, your skills, but also tie them into why the organization needs it. The last part is a sort of paving the path for your interview. It's sort of a call for asking for a meeting, restating your contact information, briefly restate your strong interest and your passion about this position, this company, and closing with a positive note, like I look forward to hearing back, kind of ending it with a positive note. And there are two ways to organize your main body that we see as effective for entry-level jobs. If you're a very creative person, feel free to create your own style and your ways to structure a cover letter. But these are the ways that we see as sort of a safe but also powerful ways to structure the main body of your cover letter. The first one is by skills. So think about the core skills that your target job posting is asking for, whether that is analytical skills, that's communication skills or leadership. You can actually target those by orienting your experiences and examples around those skills. And each of these skills, for example, if I'm talking about my analytical side of things, I can talk about how I write a senior thesis paper, or how I can piloted a survey for a product, or how I did financial analysis or synthesize a lot of data, right? Like you have supporting evidence for each of the skills that you have. And this structure actually makes it easier for you to target the job description really well. So it actually looks like this, and Yonho, we can click on to show on the right. Yes. So this is very small wording, but you can actually see the main body is structured around leadership, problem solving, and initiative, the three kind of core skills or the core competencies that this person identified for themselves. And for each of them, he actually has a couple of examples to support their argument. You don't have to have that catchword like start your paragraph, but it's a clear way for people to actually see what your core skills are and core competencies and the relevance to this job. Another way to organize this is by experience, which will be on the second page. Now, this we see more with people who actually have one or two significant experiences that almost define their professional life, because these experiences actually can demonstrate a multiple facets of their skill sets. So for example, in this case, we have this person who did multiple internships at a foreign exchange department of a trading company. So I imagine that to be a 6-month or beyond or kind of rotational internship, in which case this person has multiple rotations in different shifts, and thereby to actually be able to demonstrate different aspects of his skill set. So if you do have something that is as significant, I would say anything that's 6 months or beyond, or is very relevant to the jobs you're posting, this is also a good structure to have. So you actually rearrange the skills to actually fit into different experiences. Brooke, Byung-ho, or Zeke, anything you want to supplement?
Yeah, you can do a combo of both. I think I usually have lead with an experience, but then also lead a skill that kind of captures different experiences as well. So feel free to play around with it. I think it also depends on the industry. If you are applying to more technical roles, I think skills are definitely going to be at the forefront, but something a little bit more qualitative like marketing, I would say experiences are going to make or break it.
Yes, definitely. This is a basic, cover letter 101 sort of structure, but play with it and make sure that it actually sounds authentically yourself. Kind of, make sure that you come to CMC for a final read before you send it out, because we know that cover letter can be tricky. It's sort of it's personal, but also it's a professional output.
One other thing I'll add on that too is I think, when you do use this format, you just to emphasize, you don't want to just reuse a bullet straight from your resume. I mean, if you did that, at the very least, you'd want to really expand on it so it's not just repeating the same. But I think, something I've heard people say is that, the resume is so good at telling what you do, and the cover letter is really more of the place to get in sort of the why. So if there's some, a lot of times I'll be working with someone on a resume and I'll be like, oh, I did this and I did this at this place, and then it switched to this. And it really kind of helps explain why I want to do this. And I was like, yeah, that's great. What you described to me is not going to fit within a bullet or two on your resume, but it's important because it emphasizes that why. So start thinking about how you could put that instead in your cover letter.
And that is actually exactly an argument for why cover letter is not useless, because it is almost like explaining that backstory to help it kind of evolve your resume into a elevator pitch. It kind of is a sort of a movie almost made out of your resume, the what. It gives you the whys. So that's a lot already. And we are going to talk about tailoring cover letters, because to hiring managers, this is very important. It's almost every tip that you receive about cover letters is going to advise you against having a cookie cutter format of a cover letter, even though you can have a template. And we have the stats on the right-hand side to show how important it is to actually tailor your cover letter. It's almost, if you send something that's boilerplate, it's almost as if you're not sending it, because almost all hiring managers will prefer something that is tailored to their job posting, because it's not relevant to them. It's not useful. Just to have something in mind when you actually create them, which means that you're going to have something as a template, but you actually have to spend a lot more time to customize it to each of the postings that you have. Now, some of you have been may have started exploring using AI assisted tools in your writing, because it is a lot of work. We're going to talk a little bit about how to use that. First is words of caution. We played around with AI assistant tools, mostly Byungho in our office. And we find that most AI tools will recommend the same template if you actually just enter, write me a cover letter for X job with Y company. They can be very generic, right? So if you look at the top right corner, this is a consulting position, Deloitte, but actually it's saying something, but it's saying something very generic. It's very hard to copy and paste that and call it a day, because it really, well, one, it may be trackable by the ATS system, and they may recognize this AI writing, in which this would be detrimental to your application overall, right? And secondly, this is really like, it's not specific. It doesn't really make a resume jump out, because it's talking in very, very generic terms. Also be aware that AIs may make up experiences. For example, in this lower right-hand side example, it actually talks about someone working in a Fortune 500 company, et cetera, which actually never happened. So like, make sure that you always check the work from the AI and own your final product.
One thing I'll add is that as I was testing, there's a lot of things of caution, but the one benefit of doing this is the fact that it can be a good starting point. If I have no idea how to start my cover letter, just having like the first sentence, like getting inspiration from that, I want to still customize and make sure it's in my words, but it can help kind of start things. So definitely use that if you are having writer's block. But you could see right there in one of the prompts, like, I believe that'll be a valuable asset to your esteemed organization. You'll want to go in and customize that. I believe I'll be, an asset to the consulting team on XYZ project. Those are the ways that you want to start personalizing that.
Yes. So if we, as here you see from EU.ai, if you personalize your request with more information, it can actually give you a better template. This is again beyond host work in just a generic request for a consulting job, cover letter, or with some of the background of yourself, right? So it gives you like a better starting point. You'll still need to do a lot more work on top of this, but if this actually gives you something to start with, feel free to use it. Now, UAI has a UWrite function that actually allows you to consider the audience and the tone changes when writing a prompt. Bard AI also have some suggestions to improve your prompts, and you all know ChatGPT, which gives you like the header template.
And basically kind of emphasizing that every tool has different features. And so if you like one of them, you might actually have a better need for another, just because, again, some of them personalize it even more. Some of them might give you additional recommendations. So definitely play around with it. But again, we want to emphasize you do need to personalize it. This isn't, taking the easy route. If anything, this is a way for you to upskill and get your cover letter even better.
Yes, so common mistakes that we've seen across the CMC office throughout the years. The number one is quite simple. You got a wrong company name or the hiring manager names. And we've definitely heard complaints about them from alumni and employers. So make sure you triple check file name, what have you, have the right names to be sent. This is an easy mistake, but very, very avoidable one. Some letters are too long. Typically, we don't recommend anything more than 400 words because it will risk being not punchy enough or looking visually unpleasant. So usually where the troubleshooting needs to happen is when the letter gets too long, is the supporting examples are too long, right? This is not a full interview question answer. You don't need to give a full detail, even though you need to describe the setting and what you did and the results. It can be 2 sentences rather than 5, right? Sometimes people compile too many examples without summarizing a theme, meaning, oh, I did this, I did that, and there's sort of one theme, but actually you're not calling it out. So actually the example section is getting too high, getting too long without actually hitting the target keywords. There are also letters that we've seen, the first drafts of repeating a claim, right? Like, I am who you want to hire. I'm your ideal candidate. I love learning. I am passionate about working. I'm a great communicator. All these claims, but without supporting evidence. And that can be seen as kind of a hollow claim. And if you're not providing supporting evidence, it's very hard to be convincing. Again, a common mistake would be cookie cutter letters, sending similar ones or the same ones to different companies or even different companies in different industries. So if you are actually, for example, if you're recruiting for a marketing role versus a consulting role, we actually strongly recommend you almost creating 2 templates or having kind of different modules to play around to actually have as templates, because it'll be hard to fit both objectives into one template or one set of skills. Some of the generic wordings to be avoided are like "Dear Sir, Madam," to whom it may concern. It really shows that you haven't really done anything about the company or who are you even addressing it to. Or as I just mentioned, the company is an industry leader as a top player, et cetera, et cetera. So like actually find specific things about the company's culture, its market, its products to say, to show that you've done the research. Some other minor points which I've seen is not using enough active tense. So a lot of the descriptions, because we don't want to be seen as bragging, became this internship provided me with this experience, that that research project allowed me to. And if more of those take place, it can actually make your argument seem quite passive. So make sure that you check that. And some of the word choices, make sure that they're not too casual and too colloquial. And the last point is making sure that your cover letter is visually pleasant. That was a lot of talking on my part. Now we're going to have an activity to go through a cover letter. This is an anonymous cover letter from a public source, so it's not linked to Owen. We actually have a Word doc file. Actually, I can put that into the chat. And we're gonna spend, let's see, maybe 10 minutes talking about them, maybe 7 minutes in breakout rooms, and 3 when we reconvene with the larger group. Does everyone see the cover letter Word document in the chat box? Okay. So we're going to talk about what this candidate did well, what can be improved, and how to improve it. Sorry?
Do you want me to go ahead and create the breakout rooms?
Yes. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Oh, and just a reminder to record again once
Yes, I did.
Thank you all for remembering that.
All right, do we have everyone back?
I think there's 2 people left, Divya and Joytika. But it'll close in about 10 seconds. So
all right. So what do people think? Anyone? First.
Kick it off, if that's all right. So I was in group 1, and just some of the notes we talked about were that it wasn't long enough. There were some grammatical errors. We didn't feel that it was professional enough. An example was when they talked about the social media campaigns they worked on, they used the social media's handle, and there's just a better way to articulate that. Something that we mentioned that they did well was talking about their skill set, but something they could improve was talking about examples that are a little bit more in depth and kind of show more actionable results.
Yep. Definitely in the main room, we definitely also agree and spotted that lack of in-depth evidence and examples. Yeah, some of the words are a bit casual and can be better worded. Thank you, Taylor. Anyone else?
I can share what we discussed. I mean, as a general thing, we went by paragraph, but as a general thing, there are a lot of typos. It wasn't very well written. But definitely more trusted words most of the time. The first paragraph, we thought was a lot of useless information that the hiring manager already knows. Like, there's really no point on mentioning they saw it on Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever. like unless you were able to like, network with somebody at like a career fair or something of that nature, there's no point of mentioning that. And so, and it's regurgitating back to job posting basically to the hiring manager. So that's kind of useless. The second paragraph, we thought she was just like kind of listing her skills without really backing it up with any stories or experience. Third paragraph was very generic. There's no specific achievements, no quantifiable, like, no results, nothing. And we thought she closed it out well. That's what we said she did well. The last paragraph was good.
Right. Thank you, Dan. So really your critique is focused on distilling information that's not actually presented in the resumes, right? Rather than actually repeating a lot of that information, sort of like fillers, but actually not giving additional information. And also quantified results for like paragraph number 3. So yeah, those are all very valid points. Thanks, Dan. Any other groups? One more? Okay. All right, I think that really covers the most of it. Sort of the checking the wording for the appropriateness of the level audience or like business versus being too casual, words that can be or information that can be seen from the resume, kind of repetition, definitely examples in the second paragraph, just rather than compiling skills and quantifiable results for paragraph 3. And, the person did well with the structures and some of the skills. And yeah, I agree that the ending was quite well done. So the word count was 279. So definitely there's room for the person to expand on some of their experiences. Thank you, groups. Well done. Sort of a last point for me is a bit of brain science. And if the basics of the neuroscience, there's the left hemisphere and right hemisphere largely. Writing actually uses the creative part of our brain, which is the right hemisphere. And when you're editing, you actually use the logical part of the brain. And a lot of times when I do that often by myself, is I'm writing and editing at the same time. So it's like you're putting your foot on the gas pedal and the brake at the same time, like switching back and forth, right? So these are two very different processes. And by doing that at the same time, you actually really slows yourself down. This is a kind of common thing that we see, and some of the deterrents of why we don't want to write, because it's like painful, it takes a lot of time, right? And some of that neuroscience is happening if you're actually doing both processes at the same time. So we will have in this next activity in the next sort of 10 minutes or so, actually less than that, have you just write, and without censoring yourself, without any capitalized letters, ignore the typos or your sentence structure. We're just gonna write together for actually only 2 minutes. The next page on the last activity, we're gonna have you prepare for yourself 3 minutes of sort of recalling what we discussed today, and end up with all that information and putting them on a Word doc with 2 minutes as a limit. So we're just going to cut through all of that editing. We're just going to write for 2 minutes. In order to prepare for that, I want you to spend the next 3 minutes to think of a target job, a job that you want to apply to. Just recall the basic structure of a cover letter, right? I like you, I like you, you like me, let's get together, right? And think about a basic pitch structure, whether that's by skill or by experience. and think of supporting evidence for each of those. Now, from 9:46 to say 9:50, we're gonna do that brainstorming. And you can jot things down, you can sketch it out. We're not gonna start writing until say 9:50. And I'm gonna have a stopwatch for 2 minutes for us to all just write. All right. So I'm gonna give you the 3 minute now to organize your thoughts. All right, what do we got? How's everyone feeling about it? Did anyone get to finish the full letter? Anyone? Anyone care to share the experience of what it's like to be writing without editing? And just full on writing for 2 minutes?
Feel free to put things in the chat too, if that's more
Yes.
comfortable to do it that way.
Right. Oh, wow, we've got structures here. Thank you, Lily, for sharing. Yes, I'm very interested in the program. I've learned a lot through this, and I'm confident that my academic and professional experience will be able to add significant value. So we're going to write about skill 1, skill 2, and skill 3 with relevant experience examples. Yes, that's a great structure to have reiterate interest, and thank you. Yes. And Jen is sharing that it's hard to write and without edit. Yes, because we've been doing our own way, right, for many, many years. And I'm hoping that this exercise is strange, but liberating in a way for you, if you tend to procrastinate on writing because of the editing and writing dynamic, this is a way to kind of break through that. Thank you for sharing, Jenna. All right, given the interest of time, I think we're gonna wrap it up with 2 very easy quizzes. The first one is, what percentage of hiring managers read cover letters frequently or all the time? And A, B, C, or D? Now we know it's D, right? Second quiz question. What are the 3 main sections of a cover letter? And yes, I like you, you like me, let's get together. That's like 2 quick takeaways, hopefully, that you've got through today's session. And thank you all for your early morning time. A couple of resources to read more on cover letters. One is 1220 under the resources library chat. I don't think I've cut it through on the left-hand side. So the resources library tab, there is a whole section on cover letters, and each of the programs, data science, MSF, and MARC, you should also have dedicated resources for cover letters. Yes, this is the link that Brooke is sending through the chat box. We also have a communications lab at Owen, so feel free to check them out if you want to dig deeper into writing and communication skills. And a couple advertisements. Next page for, obviously we have the interviews and the final session for the summer prep series that's happening next Thursday morning, again at 9 a.m. We also have 2 LinkedIn veterans who come to talk on using ChatGPT and data-backed career search on the next page. These are the links, and you can find them on 12/20, one tonight at 6 p.m. and another one on the 24th at 9 a.m. from LinkedIn Guys. Brooke again is sending the direct links on here if you want to register now. And one final question for you to think about before next session, next Thursday. So reflecting on your last interview for an internship, job, or a master's program, what question did you struggle with the most? I will leave you with that. And Byung-ho, is that for people to take into the next session as an opening question and answer?
So we're gonna use that for our activity. And I highly encourage everyone to come to the last one because it will kind of capture everything that we've talked about throughout the whole summer. So while we're focusing on interviews, we'll also be referencing all of the different topics we covered so far.
Yes. Yes. So it's going to be a wrap for all this our summer workshops and this series. On the last 2 pages, you again, if you don't know us already, we're your CMC team, Zeke, myself, Brooke, Trinity, and Byung-ho. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions in the interim.
And one more thing I'll add too is we will likely be having one more session after our 8th one. And you've gotten to meet a lot of the coaching team, and there's also an employer relations team. And that team, awesome timing. That team, especially Heather and Emma, they spend a lot of time working with employers. They also spend a lot of time working with the 12/20 system. And they're going to do a workshop just on 12/20, what it does, how you can use it. Because right now you all have partial access and you're going to get access to even more in a bit. They're also going to talk briefly about another system, the handshake system. Those of you that did Vanderbilt undergraduate or other degrees here, you may already be familiar with that or maybe had that at your undergrad institution. Eventually you will be getting access to that as well. That does not come through the ONCMC, it comes through the Vanderbilt Career Center. So more on that, but we're hoping that session will be the week following our last one. So it'd be Thursday, August 3rd, hopefully at 9 o'clock. More details to come as we finalize that with them. Thanks
Any
for
last questions before we wrap up? Okay, if not, we'll be signing off from here. Thank you again, everyone, for your time. I appreciate you working with us on this topic, and hopefully, you know, this small exercise actually help you kickstart your first draft of your cover letter and give you some of the tips and information for you to get started with your first draft. And definitely seek us out for proofread or review before you actually send out your final draft to your job postings. So good luck with that. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.